Syria affirms that France and Britain are practicing a policy that would involve the EU in continuing aggression on the Syrian people. The Syrian army eliminates scores of terrorists in several areas and destroys their criminal tools. As the Israelis' enemy settlements construction policy continues, the Zionist entity elect a new Knesset. Good afternoon, this is News in English from the Syrian television in Damascus. The Foreign and Expatriates Ministry in Syria has said that France and Britain are still following policies that would involve the European Union in further aggression and bloodshed targeting Syria and Syrian people. The latest example, the ministry said, was the European Union's declaration yesterday of its intention to continue imposing new sanctions on the Syrian people. Condoning such stance by both countries, the European Union, the ministry said in a statement, would be responsible for prolonging the crisis in Syria, increasing terrorism there and targeting Syrian citizens' means of livelihood through the unilateral sanctions that flagrantly contravene the United Nations Charter and the international humanitarian law, seeking to attract Gulf investments, particularly from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Some European states, the statement said, have ignored that both countries do not abide by the basic human rights. Those European states have thus made the EU the last side entitled to lecture on the principles of values. The ministry concluded its statement by saying that the EU member countries, which have expressed on more than one occasion resentment over such attitude, must put an end to the policy of some of its countries, particularly France and the United Kingdom, which cause the EU as a whole to be involved in stands that do not serve its own interests and stability and drive it to serve their own agendas in embodiment of their ugly colonialist history. In solidarity with Syria against the terrorism which has been hitting the country over the last 4 years, the youth of the European Front to Defend Syria hoisted the Syrian flag atop the giant Roman amphitheater, the Colosseum, in the middle of the Italian capital, Rome. Hundreds of Italian citizens and tourists gathered to watch the event, which was held at one of the most important historical sites in Rome. A Syrian army unit has eliminated all the members of a terrorist organization on Hrak al-Karak road in Dar'a countryside to the south of the country. Several armed men were also killed in As-Sabruqa and Al-Hamidiyya village in Qunayt al-Suburb. In Homs countryside, a number of gunmen have been killed in Al-Msherfi, Al-Janubiyya and Rajm al-Qasir. A mortar guns podium was destroyed in Tel Rastan. Scores of terrorists have also been killed or wounded in Hama suburb. In Idlib countryside, Jabhat al-Nusra hideouts have been targeted in several areas. A number of the terrorist organization's leaders have been killed, including the Saudi Abu Khadija al-Shari'a, Yusuf from Uzbekistan, and two Jordanians, Abu Bakr and Hadir. In Deir ez-Zor, Syrian army units targeted terrorists' hideouts in Al-Bukamal, Hat al-Daraj and Al-Muhassan. France has admitted that 1,422 French citizens or residents in France have been linked in one way or another to the terrorist organizations operating in Syria. The French Interior Ministry said that 413 French people, including more than 100 women, are currently fighting among the ranks of such organizations. 300 others are moreover trying to have access to Syria for the same purpose. 80 Frenchmen, the French Interior Ministry added, have so far been killed in Syria, while 260 have been returned home after taking part in terrorist acts. More than 370 citizens, the ministry went on, who are residing in France have been linked one way or another to the terrorist organizations operating in Syria. The French Interior Ministry has warned against the increasing number of Europeans who are heading to Syria in view of the danger they pose to the security and stability in their own countries. The Lebanese army has thwarted infiltration attempts by terrorists into Lebanese territories, targeting their movement and gatherings in Arsal mountains. The army fired heavy artillery shells from its positions in Dahr al-Jalf and Ras Ba'albak hills in the eastern mountains chain after monitoring terrorist moves in the direction of these sites. The Lebanese army has also cut off terrorist lines of supplies after it has been deployed in the area extending from Arsal to Al-Qa'ab mountains through the villages of Al-Faqiha, Ras Ba'albak and Al-Qa'. The Iraqi army has foiled a terrorist attempt to break into an inspection barricade north of Baghdad. 3 suicide bombers who tried to storm into the inspection point were killed. The army also eliminated 149 terrorists in a number of military operations in Al-Anbar and Salah ad-Din governorates. Dozens of Israeli settlers renewed today storming the courtyards of Al-Aqsa Mosque from Bab al-Magharibi amidst heavy security measures taken by the occupation police, who turned occupied Jerusalem into a military barracks by their heavy deployment in the streets. A source in the Directorate of Islamic Endowments in occupied Jerusalem said that dozens of Israeli settlers stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque since the early morning today, pointing out that some of the settlers tended to provoke the Palestinian prayers and Muslim scholars who were in the countryside. In the courtyard. Earlier, Israeli occupation forces who were positioned in the military towers at the barbed wire set up on the borders with the Gaza Strip had opened fire at Palestinian houses and agricultural lands east of the 2 neighborhoods of Ash-Shuja'iyya and Zaytun, as well as the area of Jahr al-Dik, inflicting damages on the civilians' properties. Israeli occupation forces also arrested 2 Palestinians near the separation barbed wire east of Al-Maghazi camp in the Gaza Strip, in addition to a number of Palestinians at the military barricades they set up at the entrance of the town of Yab'ud in Jenin in the West Bank. As the Israeli enemy persists in its policies of aggression and suppression against the Palestinians, voters in the Zionist entity continue to cast their votes to elect 120 Knesset deputies. Competing in the elections are the Likud party, headed by Netanyahu, Israel is Our Home, chaired by Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman, and several other parties which form the so-called Zionist camp, headed by Yitzhak Herzog, chairman of the Labour Party. The Arab parties take part in the elections in a unified list. Ahead of the elections, Zionist Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared his rejection of the establishment of any Palestinian state in case he wins the runoff for re-election, as he intends to continue his settlement construction policy in occupied Palestinian territories. Opinion polls have referred to the possibility of Netanyahu's loss in the elections and the acquisition of the rightist of the majority of the Knesset. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif and his U.S. counterpart John Kerry resumed their talks on Iran's nuclear program in the Swiss city of Lausanne. Following his meeting with Kerry yesterday, Zarif asserted that solutions concerning his country's nuclear program are still possible, but still there are gaps regarding some issues, as more rapprochement is achieved on other topics. Zarif affirmed that the prospects were defined for all issues and the remaining differences would be the center of today's negotiations. Diplomats expected that Iran and the 5+1 group would reach the general framework of the agreement on Iran's nuclear file before the 24th of the current month, and the final phrasing of the deal would be finished by next June. With this, we conclude our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region, you can always visit our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy. Now stay with us, the latest in the world of business and finance, after the break with Nariman.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Under the title of Developing the Teaching and the Research Methods, the first workshop has been held in the Economic College of Damascus University. The first session has focused on the research methods of the economic sciences, as the head of Damascus University has stressed that the university seeks to be distinguished in the scientific programs which are linked to the research methods, whereas the college dean has said that the workshop is among a series of events made by the college in order to deal with the obstacles facing the educational process of the economic college, hoping to achieve the best mechanisms of teaching. The Central Bank of Syria has set the price of the US dollar for the banks at 224.12 Syrian pounds and 223.76 Syrian pounds for the commercial and non-commercial purposes, whereas the euro was set by the bank at 236 Syrian pounds for the banks. Oil continued its decline after hitting a 6-year low on supplies, outpacing demand. The Brent crude fell below $54 a barrel in choppy trade, reversing gains earlier in the day as concerns over a growing supply glut weighed on the market, while the U.S. crude or West Texas Intermediate WTI was down 47 cents and slightly above 6-year lows. Asian stocks markets jumped while Europe got off to a lackluster start as investors cheered the prospect of stimulus in China and second-guessed what signals the Federal Reserve will give on interest rates at its policy meeting this week. Falling for the second straight day, gold prices declined to hit over 3 months low at the bullion market today on a weakening global trend amid low demand from jewelers, as the silver also dropped on reduced offtake by industrial units and coin makers. In currency trading, the euro rose for a second straight day against the US dollar as investors awaited the start of a 2-day US Federal Reserve policy meeting that will test expectations of a mid-2015 raise in US interest rates. Ladies and gentlemen, this was our economic news for today. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.